So I'm moving over to Virginia and talking to Dee. Hi, Dee. How may I help you?
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for taking my call.
You're very welcome.
I had a question about my husband, whether he was. I felt like when I listened to a podcast of yours, your spouse is in love with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the way he's acting. He left crying, saying I was his best friend, but over the months he got meaner, colder. Now he just doesn't communicate except every 2 weeks, and he'll say 5 minutes away, like that's it. Pick up the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought something was going on with him, and I found out that he is not living where he said he was. He's living with the woman he had an affair with a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
She's about 12 years younger. She's married. There's a huge income disparity. He has a lot to lose by doing this. He told me he ended the affair. Our marriage was doing really good, but he left saying he never loved me, doesn't love me. We're just friends, and we've known each other since elementary school. He said, it was never love. We have 6 children. So my question is, it feels like since he began that affair at the end of 2014, he said he ended it in 15. I'm not sure when he began it again. I know it was going on at least until 17 because I actually have a picture. But could it have evolved into like some sort of love? And how do I do smart contact when he's like so hostile, so mean? 3 of our children won't talk to him. He doesn't reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
His mom believes that his story, which is he's been in pain for the past 20-some years being married to me. He's just been doing what good guys do, and now he doesn't want to finish last in his life. That's what he's telling everybody.
Yeah. I am so sorry, Dee. As to whether or not it's limerence, there are a whole bunch of characteristics of limerence, but he has been with this woman for how long now? Actually with her, living with her?
Living with her since September.
Okay.
He's been living there since September. But and then my other question is, I feel like if I tell him that I know, like it'll make it easier for him to just say, well, here it is. Right now he's trying to push me into a quick divorce, but I won't allow it.
Okay, tell him that he's living with the other woman. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you are convinced that he is. I mean, you have evidence, proof, something like that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, answer briefly, if I may. One thing to understand is that limerence is a kind of love, but it's a kind of love that's very volatile and short-lived, meaning that it's typically going to last somewhere between 3 months and 48 months. And if you go halfway through that at 24 months, more than half of them are done by the 24th month. And so what sets limerence apart has to do with the fact that limerence is almost always almost like an obsession with the other person. Now, there are various kinds of love that we can measure in the social sciences, tons of different kinds of love we can actually measure in the social sciences. But the limerence is one where a person's mind is occupied with the other person. They spend up to 85% of their time thinking about that person. And most of that is daydreaming about what the future is going to be like. And then they have this tremendous jealousy about the other person because they want them to feel toward them. They want the other person to feel toward them the way they feel. There's a lot of different characteristics, a lot of different things going on there that make it limerence. But one thing that is always true is that it cannot last a lifetime. It can't even last years. I'm going to take that back. Rare cases. It can last past 48 months, but those are exceptionally rare. And most are done by the 24th month. The real question becomes, okay, and I heard you asking, okay, if it's not limerence, did it develop into some other kind of love? And the answer is that's a possibility, but I can't tell you what kind of love it might have evolved into. And probably if it did evolve in any way, it evolved in a way that's not healthy. In other words, whatever he's feeling for her now, even if it's not limerence, if we were trying to measure various kinds of love, it's probably not one that we would say would keep a couple together for a lifetime. Okay? There's a different kind of thing that has to do with that. So, yes, limerence is a kind of love. May he have evolved into a different kind of love with her? The answer is yes, but it does not necessarily mean it's a lifelong love, nor does it mean it's a healthy kind of love. It may be something that falls apart next week, for all we know, but it probably does not have the level of obsession that limerence does. Now, I feel like I'm going in circles here. Am I answering your question at all?
Yeah, you are. I just, because it's been so long, I guess it makes me feel really like just depressed and not very hopeful, because like I don't have a chance to like really have any contact with him without it being push behavior. And I've tried, like
Yeah.
even just to call, and we had a fire in our garage, and my son's hands got burned, and his response by text was, "That's scary." Like that was it.
That was it?
And this man is a physician. That was it. He never came to check on the child, and that son hasn't spoken to him at all. And this happened in December, and he didn't
Wow.
come and check on the house or the child. He's a physician. The woman is married. She's like 13 years younger, and like when you look at her, it's such a disparity. Like
Yeah.
our male friends are very disappointed, and they say he really should know that it's not limerence on her part. It's definitely the income. And my husband, when he had an affair, he was obsessed. He was like, "No, she's in love with me. She's in love with me," because she fell apart when I broke it off. She just damn near fell apart. I mean, he was just really obsessed with it. So I don't have support of his family. It all began when our daughter had a mental crisis, and it just seemed like our family just went downhill from there. But I just really don't know what to do without having the contact, and he has a lot to lose
Right.
in a divorce. But it's like he's just convinced that he never was in love with me, even as teenagers, and that we shouldn't have had the children. We shouldn't have done this. Every decision in his life has been terrible because of me, and he went to medical school because of me. It's hard not to take it personally.
Well, and I can understand that, but I sure hope that you try not to take it personally. And the things you're describing sure sound like limerence, because it has to do with rewriting history. It has to do with vilifying the other person, the spouse, which he's doing toward you. The only thing a person can do in a situation that you're in, well, obviously, if you want, you can get an attorney and divorce him and take care of yourself and your kids financially and those other kind of ways, if that's what you wish to do. If you're trying to hold out hope that maybe somehow the marriage can get back together, and therefore you're not ready to divorce, then the way you would do that, are you familiar with our terminology like pies and safe place and things like that?
Yes, I actually lost 85 pounds since he left, and he said nothing.
Yeah. Well, remember that the pies are part of an attraction of the other person being attracted to you, but you really do the pies for you. And so that puts you in a better
yeah,
health
I do.
situation, et cetera. Right? And so what you do is you continue to work on your pies, and you continue to be the person who listens to other people, not just a safe place to your husband, but a safe place to everybody where you listen, you're understanding, you're compassionate. And what we hope happens over time is this. You may have heard me say this before. People don't leave what they have unless they believe what they're going to is better. So in his mind, for whatever reason, he believes what he's going to is better. When that finally falls apart, and if indeed it's limerence is going to fall apart, when that finally falls apart, they don't necessarily come back because they've convinced themselves being away from you is better. So the reason you work on the pies and the safe place and those other things we talk about is that when it finally does begin to fall apart, and he begins to see, hey, wait a minute, Dee is like amazing. She's grown in these areas, and she's become, et cetera, et cetera. Wow, my better course of action is to come back toward Dee. And that's when we say you do the pies in the safe place no matter what the other person is doing, so that whenever, at whatever point they begin to change, they begin to realize, wait a minute, being with Dee is the best thing for me. Still working off that same principle, that people don't leave what they have unless what they believe they're going to is better. Now, if you at some point get tired of this and you say, I'm not going to do that anymore, I recommend that you still work on the pies in the safe place just for your future life. And of course, you realize that you can get an attorney and do that route anytime that you're ready. I admire the fact that you're still trying to make your marriage work. And I really hope that he comes to his senses, and because it sounds to me like you're a remarkable woman.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Yes,
Should I
ma'am.
tell him that I know about it? My children already think that he's with someone, and they think that I'm silly for not believing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of my friends and neighbors, like, they kind of say that he's with someone. So I kind of feel silly, like I'm the last one to suspect it.
So what would you be
'cause I
trying
really
to
believe
accomplish? What would you be trying to accomplish if you tell him you know? What would be your goal?
I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't know.
Well, if your goal is just to
I
let
guess
him
it
know
just
that,
feels awful that he's not telling the truth.
okay, if your goal is simply, okay, I just want you to know you're not fooling me, if that's your goal, then tell him. If your goal is maybe this will shake him up some and change that situation with her, if it really is limerence, people in limerence, when they feel there's some obstacle that comes at them, it actually pushes them closer together rather than further apart. So if your goal is, I'm going to tell him so he'll come to his senses and leave her, the greater likelihood is it's going to push him just the other way. It'll push him toward her. But if your goal is, I just need him to know I'm not a fool, if that's your goal, then you can tell him. I always recommend it this way. Think about what you're trying to accomplish and ask yourself, is it worth the negatives that I'm going to encounter to get this thing I'm trying to accomplish if I do this? And that's the real question.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Have you ever seen it come around when someone just has said such awful things and no contact at all, just like doesn't want to deal with me at all? I mean, it's just hard. It's been 28 total years as a couple.
Yep.
We're only 45.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen it on many occasions. Not only have I seen it, Dee, I've lived it. It was quite a long time ago, more than 3 decades ago, but I left Alice for a younger woman and wound up saying just mean and vicious things to Alice, mean and vicious things about Alice, telling her that I never had been in love with her. We'd been married 15 years. That's the difference there. But I pretty well did nearly everything that you're describing right here that your husband's doing. You know, it took me a while to come to my senses, and Alice was already dating somebody else when I did. She'd moved on. But when I came to my senses, she, by the grace and mercy of God, gave me another chance, and we put it back together. So not only have I seen it with a lot of other couples, I've lived it. I've been there. And it sounds to me like you're as strong a woman as Alice is. It was Alice's strength that made everything happen. You sound that strong to me, my friend.
Thank you.
Okay, Dee. Sorry that I have to hasten on.
All right.
May God be with you, okay?
All right.